Yeah, politics is always about the carrot and stick. And this is where I think one of the failings of Afghanistan over the last 20 years about how to encourage the better elements in society and not see this in very black and white Manichaean terms. I mean, if you start talking about sanctions today and start thinking about who you're going to apply them against, you're going to have very little leverage over the organization going forward. So we have to take the international community, that is, has to take a longer term view about how to cultivate a relationship with any government in Afghanistan. And that has to set out some fairly clear red lines in terms of behavior. If we're talking about the Taliban of old, of course, there are trigger points around the treatment of individuals, about human rights, and particularly gender rights, which could be one of those triggers. And I think that has to be laid out fairly clearly. And perhaps that's something that can come out of the G7 meeting. But I do suspect that they will focus very much on the next couple of weeks, how to get as many people out as possible, who's going to take responsibility for that. And they're probably going to try and patch up the perceptions of division within the organization itself, the perception that Europe has ostensibly relegated its security and independence to the will of US domestic politics, as we have seen over this rather catastrophic withdrawal.
We're almost out of time, but on the speed of the evacuations, of course, it was criticised for being chaotic in the early days, but so far the US has managed to evacuate some 48,000 people from Afghanistan. Is the speed now looking appropriate to, of course, avert a significant humanitarian crisis come August 31st?
Well, I don't think so. The speed has certainly improved, but there's a lot more than 48,000 people who want to get out of Afghanistan right now, at least if the number of messages in my inbox is anything to go by, and these desperate pleas for help. I mean, this has been incredibly badly handled. You know, if this was a commercial operation, you would have set up a call center, you would have done what every corporate entity would do in terms of making points of contact available. And a lot of this is dependent on personal relationships and people kind of finding their way in spite of the system. Yes, of course, inevitably, it's improved, but it has been truly chaotic. And as the Taliban increasingly get to grips with security in Kabul, because essentially it was a very small force over there, they will probably become much tougher in terms of access to the airport. That might be more orderly, but it may also mean fewer people.